This is part 2 of our Black Panther 1 year anniversary celebration. This is episode, if all goes well with our planning, this would be episode 38 of AP Marvel. Part 1, we talked about the Society of Wakanda, what the different components of it, the social life of it, and all the comics inspirations that went with it. Today we're going to talk about kind of prefacing with the Killmonger versus T'Challa clash on how to deal with Wakanda being an isolated nation during international turmoil. That was kind of the heart of the film. So at the very end, spoilers for Black Panther, I guess, but at the very end, T'Challa has won this battle, the physical battle against Killmonger, but they go outside the apartment of where his uncle, played by Sterling K. Brown, was killed by T'Chaka, and it's kind of like this bad part of history for their family. So they want to kind of make up for it. They're in Oakland. It is T'Challa and Shuri, and he's kind of revealing his plans of, and someone can elaborate on this further if I miss any details, but he basically is suggesting he's establishing these outreach centers, with Oakland's being one of the places for them. So I kind of wanted to talk about today of how would that work in the real world? What are some benefits that will come from that? What are some possible consequences from this solution of outreach, of opening up to the world and physically establishing places around the world? So I'm your host, Chris Compendio. You can find me on Twitter at Compenderizer. Back with me, we're not going to do too long intros because you just heard us last week, presumably. Why would you start with part 2? Sabrina Clark is here.
Hey everybody, it's Sabrina Clark here again. You can find me on Twitter at Sabs Clark. That's at SABSCLARKE.
Dope. And Brandon Kessley is back with us.
Hello everyone, Brandon Kessley here. You can find me on Twitter at BCKesso, that's BCKESSO, and you can also follow the Rising Young Minds, the publication for which I write and am co-founder and editor-in-chief, at The Rhyme, that's THE_RYM.
Cool. And lastly, Kara Mahorn, I guess, I was joking in our Spider-Verse episode that your voice was heard in our New York Comic Con episode, so let's just call this your 4th appearance on AP Marvel.
So yes, hey, I'm Karama, aka the Blurred Girl, and I'm basically the Blurred Girl all over social media.
There you go. Very easy to remember. All right, let's just jump into it. So while you were watching Black Panther, and this issue of Wakanda is kind of isolated from the world, we could be doing more, comes up very early, and it's mostly through Nakia, who has this very this empathetic vibe compared to kind of a more belligerent vibe from Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger. So while you were watching the movie, where did you stand as Lupita Nyong'o's character was kind of arguing for more? She has been there. Like, she has been seeing the hardships of other people. So where did you kind of stand with her?
As I've written in our doc here, I'll just 3 words: right with her. Period.
Would you like to elaborate on those 3 words?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
She's like, no,
that's all. Thank you.
Next. Walked away.
I absolutely stand right with Nakia, because while I do understand that there are resources that are particular to Wakanda, and it's very important to prioritize the Wakandan people, it's also important to know the amount of impact that the nation has already had on the world, or the ways in which it could benefit the people who are really suffering. And I know that Nakia is mostly, for those of you who are more comic book aficionados, please correct me if I'm wrong, but she is mostly involved in a lot of the outreach things in the nation, right? She deals with a lot of social issues in Wakanda. And I think, from my understanding from the movie, or her character in the movie, she is basing most of her decisions and most of her beliefs about Wakanda expanding a little bit based off of what she has already gathered from her work in the Wakandan community.
Yeah, she absolutely was not written like that in the comics.
Yeah, no.
Old or new, it's actually some of what you hear in the movie is actually closer to World of Wakanda and the Dora Milaje. But it's interesting because I agree with you. A lot of people were walking around, trying to make those shirts like Killmonger was right. And Chris, I know I've said this to you before. Killmonger in the movie, Killmonger like jacked up every woman he put his hands on. So I'm a tell people to take those shirts off and say either Nakir was right or at least in Djobu his father was right, because his father had some radical concepts, but he wasn't going around like shooting women. But it's funny though. There was a moment in the movie where, in fact, it's when T'Challa goes to visit W'Kabi, Daniel Kaluuya's character, and he hasn't seen the Rhino in a while, and he talks about how Nakia wants them to open their borders, and he did not agree. He was like, yeah, see, but they bring their problems with them, and then their problems become Wakanda's problems. And there's something very real to that, in the sense of, if you don't have things set up or a way to integrate refugees into your society, you do inherit a lot of those problems. So it's not to say that they should turn people away at their borders, but I think what Nakia was saying was that it was not what W'Kabi was saying. It wasn't so much that she felt we should let all these people into Wakanda's borders. It was that Wakandans should go out and help other people. I do think, though, W'Kabi had a very specific... It's very specific to W'Kabi's point of view, though, because W'Kabi is the chief of the border tribe, and their job is to keep the border. So the question then would be, how do you keep Wakanda isolated, not necessarily isolated, but secure, as well as go out and provide outreach? Because it's happened actually in the comics a couple times where, and I feel like this was in Hudlin's run, Reginald Hudlin's run, because it was like before he married Storm in the comics. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure it was Hudlin's run where the U.S. government tried to overthrow Wakanda. Yeah. They literally sent, remember they sent Batroc and Black Knight and Rhino.
They sent Cap too.
Yes, they sent and then Cap was, I guess he changed Cap's mind, but they sent, and fleets of Deathlock cyborgs, for any of you who guys watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Deathlock.
There was a lot of Deathlocks. And basically, they sent Claw there. That was in that version of the story. That was why Claw was sent to Wakanda, because it was, he won't let us in. We want what they have, so we're going to overthrow them and take it. And so that's a real, with something like if we look at vibranium as a precious mineral, that's a real threat, because I mean that's happened in places like, all over the continent. When you look at specifically the and not even the invention, but the upgrades and the technological advances made to cell phones. Coltan and tantalum capacitors are in everybody's cell phones, and a lot of that, and copper and gold, are inside people's phones, and all of those minerals are, we are mined within Africa. I mean, we see that's literally, technology in the West is basically what tore up Rwanda. And it's not just Rwandans killing each other, but the reason why a lot of the things that have happened over there have been the machinations of the West. So that's a real thing. Like, someone would have to, like, a completely different tribe would have to be set up to just control. And actually, no, there is a mining tribe. So I guess the mining tribe would be over this. How to control getting vibranium in and out of the country. Now, there is one thing. If they can keep the Wakanda that we saw in the movies is not corrupt. There is a system of values. There are rules or regulations. Even in the comic book, in fact, more so in the comic book. Because when in Ta-Nehisi Coates' run, one of the Dora Milaje breaks a rule, and Ramonda's like, all right, she's going to be put to death. These are the rules. It's like she doesn't blink. Like, this is the law. You know the law. So if if they keep those rules and regulations, they could manage to send a certain amount of vibranium to the West. But there's always going to be somebody who wants more. And so they're going to have to figure out how to solve that problem. They're going to have to figure out, if Wakanda stays impenetrable, there is another amazing run of, if anybody remembers, the Skrulls attacking.
Yep.
In there's another run called See Wakanda and Die, which was amazing because these Skrulls said they were going to roll into Wakanda. They were going to invade everywhere, including Wakanda. And Black Panther and Storm were like, really? No, you not today. And they were putting Skrull heads on spikes, like transform out of this, buddy. Like they had it unlocked. So if they can control the ebb and flow, the export of vibranium, in such a way that only a certain amount of it comes out, and it only goes to one place, and then everybody can go fight with that place. Then maybe they can, get out of it one piece. But that would be the one thing that would make me very, very, very nervous. And also, being affected by things in the West.
Yeah.
And also, I shouldn't even say the West, Asia, because I think China has a strong grip on Africa right now, and I think there might be a way of in turn, and all of the things. I'm just thinking again of cell phones, because that's just so much of what a lot of the minerals and stuff go to. So if we're looking at technology in China and Korea, I can see them actually trying to infiltrate before the West does.
And they'd probably be more successful at it too, because of the way that China, especially China, has come up in the last 20 years.
And they're already there. It's not like they have to get in; they're already there.
Yeah, but because they have that unique kind of shared background where they both needed where they needed to have that industrial revolution, and they kind of did that starting in '99. Where they really revamped and started making this push for all their exports and things that they did, and that really revamped their economy and things like that. That's something that's very realistic and something that is very much happening right now. And I could see that happening, them attempting to do that in Wakanda. I think going back to first and foremost, it's interesting that this is the crux of, or at least the beginning of the discussion, because that central question of whether or not of who T'Challa should listen to, because if you really follow the film and like just follow the dialogue, he's really pondering who's right the whole time. Right. Where he's like, he's like, is Nakia right? Is W'Kabi right? Is Killmonger right? Was my father right? And at the end of the day, he comes to his decision. But that entire argument is actually it's funny that that's actually what I wrote my one piece on the movie about.
Oh wow! But on the mineral, or on opening the borders?
On those different perspectives, and kind of how it's a kind of a mirror and a reflection of the differences in thought and differences in perspective in the Black community. But that's a separate topic.
Oh wow!
In terms of where I was with Nakia, I was basically there with her, but I also had that sense of caution with me. I have that mindset where I'll think about, okay, plan for the worst, hope for the best. So
that's why I think Ndijobu was right.
Yeah, in some sense, I think one of the major problems would be the distribution and export of the vibranium because of its destructive capacity. Because I know that when it gets into the hands of a superpower, when it gets into the hands of a United States or a Saudi Arabia or a Russia or a China or
he's gonna have to
India,
he's gonna have to do a Tony Stark and go and take it all back,
dude.
So it's gonna end up being another arms race, and that's something that would be legitimately concerning. So my question was, what does it look like to, quote unquote, open the borders? What does it look like to expose Wakanda to the world? Like, sure, you can talk about all this technological advancement, but you have to come to the realization that a lot of that is going to also spark another arms race. It's not that they would necessarily try to enhance it's not just them trying to make super soldiers. It would be them making these new weapons that can, you know, they might try to build a Death Star for starters.
Yeah.
Like if we want to be like,
Yeah.
you know, look at another Disney property, but
I think that idea about creating another arms race is so interesting because I
that's what
feel
Killmonger
like
was doing.
right, exactly. Oh man, could you imagine? That would have been, well, that's what this episode is for us to imagine.
Yeah.
But I feel like the way T'Challa might carry this out would be in terms of phases, right? So the first phase would be maybe just like a quick little look at where everyone in the country is at in terms of what access, what resources that everyone has access to, and what is it that they need first. And then I think that would be a good opportunity for, if possible, I don't know, do they have like a forum type of thing? You know how in Game of Thrones every time, well, Daenerys has all these people. Well, you know, they all have people that come to them. Their people come to them and say, "This is what's going on."
That's what the Border Tribe. I mean, not just the Border Tribe. That throne room when he had all the elders in the room.
Yeah,
I think that's his council.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they don't have like the actual civilians coming in or anything, but they just have like those representatives.
I think so, and it's almost like I guess to dumb it down because it wasn't really explained. We'll look at them as like representatives, like House representatives. So I guess each district, the people get to tell them what they want, and they go tell the king, or they go implore their idea. That is what it was hinted at, but it's never been. I haven't seen that in the comics. I've only seen.
Yeah, I haven't either.
When the people are unhappy, you see everybody unhappy.
Yeah.
You don't
Right.
see like this is the Border Tribe that's unhappy.
They riot.
Exactly, right. They're tearing stuff up.
How is that possible? Like, how is it possible that they're that collective and that efficient, you know?
Well, they haven't explained it, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that because if we're going to put together, if we're going to fill in the gaps between the comic and the movie in this magical world we're creating, I think that to have those elders sit there, you saw those elders are from the tribes, right? But then when you were at his crowning or his ritual fight, there was hundreds of people that were on the side of that mountain.
Yep.
So we're going to assume that all of these people, those are, let's say, the elite from each region, or maybe then all of Wakanda gets to come out to watch. I don't know, but
the point is.
Yeah, it gets it gave you a glimpse that there's more than just like the 5 people that are running the country. So I think that it's safe to say that, and it's clear that they have a stable economy because you saw everybody shopping and everything in the main area. But you did see, and it's funny because someone's like, "Oh, they must have poor because there was graffiti there too," and I'm like, "Not if you look at graffiti as a form of art.
Yeah.
Like it's possible that these kids just made graffiti because that's the wall you do that on." So I think that if we're looking at Wakanda or the majority of the tribes as quote unquote from Western standards middle class, it is still, and I still feel like it's a monarchy / oligarchy, that there is, but there's some type of democracy. Each king has to listen to their, or should, and I'm not saying king, I'm sorry, each leader of each tribe, I'm sure they couldn't be leader very, very long if they didn't have their own council of elders. Yeah. And I'm just thinking of, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just thinking of traditional African cultures and how they're set up.
Oh, no,
the king, if they're younger than the oldest member of the community, still will sit and listen to that elder.
Yeah.
So I still think if we keep that in mind, that the people still have a lot of say in how things go down. So I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility at all.
Okay.
No, I agree.
What would people? I mean, because we saw a brief. There was a brief time within the movie itself where Killmonger was the king. So I'm so curious of like what would the people on the ground think of his solution. He's basically again, correct me, like elaborate if I'm missing anything, but he was basically suggesting that we arm people around the world, basically with Wakandan weaponry, and there is kind of a mixed reception within that council. So let's kind of shift to Killmonger a bit before we talk about the final part of the film. But talk to me about Killmonger, especially since we talked about Nakia. Like, if you want to contrast with her.
Man, Killmonger. There's a lot to process and dissect with him. I think one of the primary things is he is a product of his environment. At least, especially within the movie, he's from Oakland. Originally, he was from Harlem, but for the movie, he's from Oakland. But he comes from Oakland, which is where the Black Panthers, like the Black Panther Party, came from.
That's also
it's also Kugler's
hometown,
hometown, exactly. Which is why like he always does something in Oakland for his movies usually. But he grew up in that environment where it was kind of kill or be killed. It was dog eat dog. It was something that was very hostile, and then he took that with him and he carried it, and he still had that intelligence where he was able to go to MIT, and he became a mercenary. He was a military person. He has this crazy service record, but he takes all of that he learned in the U.S. and he takes it back with him to his native Wakanda, and then he starts trying to do exactly what he learned. So which it comes to the point where Ross literally says he's one of ours, and it's very much like a double entendre where it's like, no, it's like, yeah, we taught him that, he learned that from us, he's CIA, but also like he's also American. Like, yeah, he's Wakandan, he's Wakandan by blood, but he's very much American. He's learned that behavior where it's like, okay,
and see that, but that right there is the argument, and we touched on this in the last episode. That right there is the argument. So many Africans versus African Americans.
Yeah.
Like African Americans, like, well, I'm African, and Africans are like, no, you're not.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're all children of the diaspora.
Yeah.
Right.
And
but
it's those roots that connect us.
Yeah.
It's supposed to, but when you talk about some of the cultural things that are or cultural aspects of being, and not just African, break it down even tighter, like being Nigerian, Kenyan, Wakandan, and African American saying, yeah, I'm from the motherland, coming back to Africa, not even being able to communicate in a mother tongue. An African, well, that right there, that argument, that going back and forth is, I think, where it is essential. You can be from somewhere but not of it. He never grew up in Wakanda, which is why when his father's spirit sees him later, he says, I regret not taking you to Wakanda sooner.
Yeah.
You should have seen the sunrise sooner. You should have been there to experience it so you would understand some beauty in your life. But unfortunately, so it's like he's a lost child.
Yeah. And very much so. And again, going back to that scene that you just brought up, that's literally why it's just him and his father. He doesn't have that literal connection. He doesn't have the spiritual connection to his home. When T'Challa goes to the ancestral plane, he sees his ancestors. When Killmonger goes there, he only sees his father. That's the only one he knows.
Only sees his father.
And it's in their
apartment in Oakland.
It's not even like...
It's in that apartment because that's what he knows. That's for him his home. Even though he's in Wakanda, that for him is home. That's his safe space.
Exactly. And it's
so
I think that's the thing that's also was so confusing for them. He is technically, like, if they could prove that he was not the son of Njobu, and that in any way, shape, or form they could prove that he was not Wakandan, then they could have killed him or kicked him out.
Right.
But the fact that he was, and he knew, okay, now we fight. I want the ritual fight. Right. Let's do it. Let's do it now. He knew the rules. So that was what was so dangerous. Somebody who knows your rules, knows your language, comes in and can still turn everything, all the beliefs and everything you have against you. Mm-hmm. They didn't have anything prepared for that. Yeah. They literally had nothing. Like, it sounds crazy, but it's years ago, I remember visiting Bermuda as a teenager with my mother, and there had been a murder. Like, a guy gone nuts and like killed his girlfriend and their kid or something like that. And they literally had nothing on the records but public hanging. Because that's how long it had been since anybody had killed anybody in Bermuda. Right. Wow. So they had to commute him back to Britain, since Bermuda is still a British-owned colony. Wow. But it was like that. There was literally, there was no precedence for this. what do we do if one of our own shows up out of nowhere and decides that they want to challenge the throne? And they are royal. What do we do? We have nothing. I'm sure after they're probably after that incident there will be laws made, but all the different dissenters, just like there was all the different people that were in the court that didn't agree, like Wakabi agreed, and this is the part that made me so frustrated too, because I really wish we had seen the scene between Denai Guerrera and Daniel Kaluuya in the movie, as opposed to it being a deleted scene.
Yeah.
Because that is what was gonna tear them apart. Like, she's like, I'm a Dora Milaje. Yes, I'm your wife, but I'm a Dora Milaje. Like, I have to, I will support whoever's on the throne.
Oh,
but
Nakia.
I do not agree with your decision.
Nakia, not with her and Nakia.
No, both her and her
Okoye,
husband.
right?
Okoye and her husband, but she was saying to him, I don't agree with this decision. I don't agree with your decision.
Yeah. You're right.
But I will absolutely defend this king, but I can't stand him. And I can't believe you've put us here because, of the fact that you want to avenge your father. That's ridiculous. You've put the entire country in peril. And it's one of those things where culture and rules and history kind of overrode, and not overrode common sense. They just literally had no other way to deal with it. So I don't know. That's one of the things that frightens me, because I feel like that would be the downfall of some place like a real life Wakanda,
or real life any civilization, to be honest. Especially if you have some sort of antiquated rules. It's very fragile, and in some sense it was its own kind of house of cards in some sense, where as soon as you tug on that one card, everything comes falling down. So here comes Big Bad Killmonger. He blows the whole thing down, and now what?
Well, you mentioned this before with in the last episode, because your family's from Liberia.
Yes.
How did the Liberians that went over and settled solve their differences with the ethnic Liberians that have been there for hundreds of years?
Wait. You mean recently?
Or ever?
Okay. Well, I kind of got a mixture of that myself. So I went to visit some family in Liberia a couple times from between 2008 and 2011, and ever since the civil wars ended, and when at the time Madame Sirleaf when she was president, a lot of Liberians who were around the world, especially in the U.S., were going back, and some of them were taking government positions, and a lot of them were trying to open businesses and really try to do certain things. And, whether or not they were doing the right thing, there was this giant aversion to having people who had left the country and not been there during the war suddenly coming back and trying to do things, and in some sense, a lot of people saw them. They had this thing that they called them, where they call them the Bintus, where they had been to America, and they're like, meanwhile, we were
the Bintus.
They were called the Bintus. Literally.
They were called the Bintus because they were like, you've been to America, and then they're like, meanwhile, we were here during the war. Some people who were
fighting and dying.
Yeah, there were like some people who were there, who are like in their 30s and 40s, who haven't been to school since like second grade because of the war, and they're now fully grown, and so you have an entire generation that has less than a fourth grade education, in some sense, and in some places of the country. And so now you have people that are literally their same age, but got a full master's, doctor's degrees, working in like Fortune 500 companies and things like that, going back to Liberia and then reaping the benefits. And they might be bringing some sense of remittance income, in a sense, or in trying to, they may actually be generating and helping the economy, but that doesn't necessarily always translate to the ground level, to someone who is was affected by the war, who wasn't even able to become a refugee. They were just stuck. They were stuck there, and they have all that trauma.
Yeah, and they might have lost everything.
Yeah.
They might have lost their home.
Yeah.
They might have lost family
a
members, limbs.
People.
Yeah.
Those that survived, a lot of them lost a lot.
That's fascinating. But see, that is a real world example of, like, if a war did break out in Wakanda over, how about this? A war did break out in Wakanda.
Exactly.
Thanos came and jacked it up. We don't know when we go back in, in Civil War, even in Black Panther, how much of the civilization of Wakanda is still left after after the snapshot. We're not sure.
But we know that didn't they evacuate some people? Didn't when we get to Wakanda in Infinity War evacuate the city, strengthen all defenses.
Yeah, but the snap.
Yeah, but that was the city. The snap was worldwide. The snap was the planet.
The snap was universe-wide.
It's universe-wide.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Wakanda's in shambles. Literally and literally.
Yeah, their king is gone.
I was just really mad that the war had to be waged in Wakanda. I'm like, not only did you take out T'Challa, but you literally are tearing up the country.
Yeah.
And but that was also in a sad way very African.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So wait, let's go back now to the point where Brandon, I think it was you when you said Killmonger came in, took their resources, completely flipped it, and obliterated them. That is exactly what European countries have been doing for years. So last episode I was talking about one class, and this episode I'm going to talk about another class that I took this year.
It's like you're a student or something.
I know, right?
She's going to get an A.
Last semester I took Modern Africa. So, boom, we're seeing constant patterns of, for example, my favorite case study was the Kingdom of Congo. And in the beginning, 1400s, 1500s, who came over though and disturbed that power? The Portuguese.
The Portuguese.
Yep.
They did the same thing to Bermuda. That's why I'm
same thing. Do you know what's crazy, bro? I studied abroad in Paris last year spring, and we went on spring break and went to Portugal, right? And we're on a boat, chilling on a boat because it's vacation, and colonialism comes up.
I was going to say, that would be a hell of a vacation.
I know, right?
That would be one hell of a vacation. She's like, I'm on a boat, and then suddenly slavery.
This fool talking about slavery. No, he fully was oh, well, the Spanish, they were conquistadoras. And us Portuguese, we at least admitted that we did harm. I was like, excuse me? But now I know that that's even more BS, because back to the Kingdom of Congo.
Damn, to be on that boat, damn it.
Yeah, it was, anywho, so back to the Kingdom of Congo. The reading that I talked about last episode was written by Sam Huntington, and this episode we're talking about Linda Haywood, who was, Bran, I don't know if you know this, but she used to teach at Boston University, and she has a really great paper that she's published doing an analysis of the Kingdom of Congo, and that's where I'm pulling stuff from. So shout out Linda Haywood. And so in this case study, we're looking at how the Portuguese got close to, at the time, the king of Congo. This is back in the 1500s, and they're discussing plans, and the Portuguese have posited themselves as being protection, right? And then slowly but surely, just like every other European nation who's done this, they just leverage their way in and say, oh, you need guns? We can give you guns, but they're not the same guns that we have, so that when we break out on you, we will win and then enslave you. And so I just feel like that same thing is kind of seen here with Killmonger, because sure, he says he's fighting for the people on the other side, but
Lies.
What about for those Wakandans who are like, hello, what about us? What about them? If they disagree with Killmonger, what's going to happen?
He kills them.
Exactly. So why would I want you up in my country when, one, you're not, you are Wakandan by blood, but two, you're trying to take all of my resources that has helped us so far, and that has helped sustain our nation for so long.
And three, you ain't acting right.
Exactly. You trying to weaponize it? Bro.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also, here's the thing though. Although we are using real world analogies for this, we're also not taking into consideration that, again, Wakandans would have been paying attention to what's happening in the rest of the world. They would not be looking at anybody coming into their country like the Congolese did and like a lot of the other African nations did in the 1800s. They wouldn't be looking at them like, wow, those are very strange looking people.
Yeah, they would know. They would
you
know.
know what I mean? They would know. They would have the history. So it's quite possible that they could defend themselves. But the problem is, honestly, how would Wakanda defend itself? More like I think you've already said this, that the threat, the bigger threat, would be the Killmongers and the people from around the diaspora that want to come there. Like, hey, like there's people that are I know African Americans who have picked up and said, you know what, I'm out, and literally have moved to Kenya or South Africa
or Liberia,
exactly, that have no tie to it, and it would be like, well, why wouldn't you let me in? I'm like you, and so Wakandans would still have to be able to say to other people in the diaspora, nope, I'm sorry, you can't get in.
So an immigration policy, dare we say? Some green cards visas gonna have to come out.
I mean,
but I feel like it would be based solely on your bloodline. Like, oh, maybe they'll do a DNA test and be like, let's like a transitional type of thing. Like, you can stay in Wakanda for a maximum of 2 years while you're figuring out what your ethnicity is before you get situated somewhere else.
No. They'd have the tech to like look at their eyeball and tell them their ethnicity.
Be like, look,
immediately.
Look into the lens.
23 and me. How about Kamoyo beating me?
Yeah. Whoa! I want to write that down. Kamoyo beating me. I'm writing that down.
Yeah. Add the ethnicity bead. Oh, bro, it's Liddy.
Yeah, but also...
Yeah, they're sitting there looking at you already going, yeah, no, you're not from here, you're from Ghana.
They're like, oh,
most of your family I'm from Brooklyn. Like, no, you're from Ghana. Actually, go that way.
That way.
But also, actually, to tie back into another real-world example, they might even have an explicit ban on certain people as, permanent property owners or like citizenship and things like that. So for example, like Liberia does have have a law where like legitimately white people cannot own land. Like it's
really?
Yeah.
You say yeah.
It's legitimately a thing. It's something that has been discussed as well. Like I know I've talked about it with part of my family, and just like,
Bermuda unfortunately is money based. To own land in Bermuda, you have to prove that you're. Well, up until a few years ago, you had to prove that your father had been born there. If your mother did, like me, you got nothing. But that's changed now. But you have to prove that you or a parent was born there, and then even then, they are still allowing people to buy land, but it's upwards of like $2 and $3 million.
Yeah,
an acre with nothing on it.
Okay.
Oh my god.
So, but unfortunately, that's meant that a lot of wealthy businesses have bought land in Bermuda, which is a very tiny island. So it's still, you still have to look at all the sides and come up with that. But I did not know there was a law in the books that no white people could buy land. Wow.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of ways to get around that, especially if you had like 2 decades of civil war. So, I mean, that was kind of, gone. But now that
and if somebody leaves you, if you buy land and then somebody gives you a lot of money for it, you sell it to them. But I guess the initial owner, is what they're talking about.
Yeah, and again, I'm not gonna pretend to be an expert in Liberian law. Just disclaimer there.
Disclaimer.
I do. That is something that has been discussed in some family discussions. Well, not just family stuff. It's been around like the community, Liberian community, and things like that, where people have talked about, hey, this is a law that's been around for a long time. I think the current president Weah was considering reevaluating the law. I don't know, but yeah, that was. I feel like there would be things like that where they would be banning certain people. I mean, it's interesting to me. Like if you go to Liberia, like sure you're gonna see people from different countries. There are like third generation like Lebanese people who are in Liberia that are, like have been born, raised Liberian accents and everything. But you're not gonna find white people with the same way.
Wow.
But
that is so deep.
Yeah, but like going back to like talking about like how China and other things would take over things. A lot of the private businesses in like there were a lot of restaurants, hotels, nightclubs and things like that, casinos that were like owned in Liberia, but they're like owned by like people that were of Lebanese descent. and then you have now a lot of public works contracts are going to a lot of Chinese construction workers. So now that's definitely putting a lot more stress on the people who are in Liberia, especially those who could very well be working and like making cement and working on the roads to get some money and things like that. And now those jobs are going to people who probably, quite frankly, aren't even immigrants to the country. They're literally just going there to work. They're not really like full on. They're not like full on immigrants really. They're just like going to work. The people from China and things like that. And nothing like not gonna knock the hustle, but can't ignore the reality as well.
Yeah. I mean, and they would have to put something into place. The other thing they have in Bermuda and a lot of other places is any business that opens up has to hire at least 30% locals. So they have to, if it is a foreign business that wants to set up shop in Liberia, not Liberia.
Wakanda.
Sorry, Wakanda. I'm mixing up reality and fiction. In Wakanda, then there would have to be, again, under border tribe rule, I guess, there would have to be some type of system set up so that you can transition and organize. Again, if there's nothing in place, trust me, some rules. There's an old proverb that says every rule comes with blood on it. So like you need, if they don't set up a rule, you best believe that someone's gonna get through, jack stuff up, and then they'll make a rule. So kind of like Killmonger did. So it's I wonder also whether or not they'd have an issue with people internally. There might be other Wakabis there, other people internally that are like, look, we don't want anybody in here. And there might be a resistance because there has, even in the comics, there have been resistance within Wakanda. There might be a resistance that's like, yeah, no, you're not from here, bounce.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember which African country was it. I feel like it was in Central Africa where he just kicked everybody out that was not just white, but literally was not born there. It's going to come to me.
I don't,
because it happened within the last 10 years.
I don't want to say Zimbabwe, but I feel like that might. No, I can't.
I thought it was further north than that.
Yeah,
I thought it was a further north, but I'm gonna look it up. But anyway, I feel like you could have a resistance that's like that. Like the Jabari would be like, "Yeah, you can try and come up in these mountains."
ain't gonna work.
I feel like with the whole transition thing, what I kind of was imagining. So let's say I'm immigrating to. Okay, let's imagine I'm not who I am. I am another African American female who does not know her heritage or her ethnicity. I go to Wakanda having known nothing about. Actually, no, I am who I am, but I don't know that I'm Liberian, right? So I go there. I go to customs. I've flown in, etc. And they're like, "Oh, so you're Liberian? Do you know anything about that?" And I'd be like, no. Tell me more. And then maybe in that transitional period there are like classes that I can take to either learn the culture, or maybe there's like a group, like a support network, or
I think if Border Tribe had anything to do with it, they would send you to classes and a support group in Liberia.
Like a little mission type of thing.
They would not let you stay. The only other instance that I think that could change is if Wakanda opened a university and let students come in from outside and faculty, then there would be a reason for them to be there. But just like every other country that has a university, you only be there for those semesters or for the years that you are in school, and then you gotta bounce.
Yep.
Or but what if I get a job after college that's in Wakanda? What if I do become a dentist?
But still, it would be green card, work papers, that kind of thing. Somebody have to sponsor you.
Can I become a citizen?
If you marry somebody.
Okay.
But then,
see, like if we use the same laws, but then even then, the rules of Wakanda marriage would be different.
Yeah, it would be. That's true. That is true.
They might be like, yes, you can get married to somebody here if 3 members of your father's line and 4 members of your mother's line are all present. And if you're like, what? I ain't talked to my auntie in 16 years, but okay, I'll find her. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, there's different rules. There's different rules.
You have to have, like, somebody to give you away or a representative, like a transfer of culture ceremony type of thing.
Or even if you were going to get married according to their rules, it's like somebody going to get married that's Hindi. Like, let's say you were not Hindi, but you're marrying somebody who is Hindi.
Yeah.
You're going to have an American Christian wedding and a Hindi wedding. You got to go over there and do all the things that they tell, go through all the rituals.
Shout out Nick Jonas.
I have to say respect to him on that one.
Yeah. He looked like he had a blast. That looked like the most fun wedding in the entire world.
It was a gorgeous wedding.
I similarly think Wakandan weddings would be the exact same.
But,
I agree.
Because African weddings are that, so.
Especially like Nigerian weddings, which, by the way, shout out cousin Jamar and Stella. But
shout out.
Yeah, marriage and things like that. That's an interesting thing. Actually, what are Wakandan marriages like? I remember something in the comics where T'Challa was one of the people that was allowed to annul weddings and things like that because he did it to Storm during the Avengers versus X-Men.
Oh, woof.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he did it. But here's the funny thing. That was done under Reginald Hudlin wrote that.
Yeah.
I really feel like if it was Ta-Nehisi Coates writing it, he would have gotten pushback.
He probably would have gotten pushback. Yeah.
I feel like the Ramonda that was written, even though Hudlin, I think, created her too, if Coates' run, if he had pulled that, she would have been like, really? You all the way west? That's what we doing? Think about it.
Yeah.
So, I think the other thing would also be like, what about child rearing?
What about who?
Like, somebody comes from the West and they're like, oh, I don't believe in spanking my children. Say that to somebody African.
Oh.
Or from an island. We don't hit our kids. Really?
I mean...
I feel like it varies tribe by tribe, discipline would vary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, that's true. The tribes would all have different traditions.
Jabari versus water tribe.
Wow, those Jabari punishments are probably tough, bro. Like, listen, mate.
He will go into the woods by himself.
Yes, in the snow, cold, no pelts, nothing. Just walk straight in, stay there for as long as possible.
You will have a stick, and you will have these seeds.
No. Actually,
no. Grow your own food.
No. It'll be just as bad, but they'll be like, they'll send them out in the snow, no pelt, nothing. They'll just be like, cut a switch.
Right, exactly. He's gonna have to be like Star Wars, like find a beast,
cut a switch,
cut
a switch, cut a switch in the snow,
exactly.
Cut a switch
in the snow.
You gonna learn today.
So now we're all like having flashbacks.
Thankfully, never had the switch.
No, my mother knew. My mother knew not to send me out for a switch. My mother knew. They're like, oh, you should send her out for a switch. She's like, please, that child will leave the state.
Oh man,
no.
y'all lucky. Y'all lucky. Okay.
I didn't get the switch, but my mother was. I was one of those kids though. If she said, I would be more upset if they said they were like. If my mother said she was disappointed in me. My father definitely gave. My father handed out the spankings, but I do remember my mother saying this, that Americans beat their kids too much. She said, you shouldn't be spanking a kid. Why are you trying to hit a kid that's 12? What is wrong with you?
Right.
Like, you shouldn't be laying a hand on a child. You've done something wrong if you feel the need to... That was her thing. Like, you clearly haven't raised them properly if you feel like you got to go toe-to-toe with a 12-year-old. Like, so... But
that's
again...
real.
That's an interesting
again, culture.
Also,
right.
Definitely real.
Culture. It's a cultural thing. So, again, like, we haven't seen those things. Weddings, child-rearing... schooling, marriage. I feel like, in addition to like just the vibranium, we like the whole kind of way of life would change if all of a sudden, one of Wakabi's son, Okoye's son, shows up and says, "I'm going to marry this Chinese woman," and they might actually be in love or whatever. But like that would be the first generation of this is somebody who's an outsider. How do we deal with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, even
I want to know if there's going to be tourism in Wakanda.
True.
Right.
I mean, Okoye wanted to Starbucks.
Maybe it will only be open for certain times, like maybe you can only come in the summer when certain things are in bloom.
the dry season. Or
I
the rainy
think they
season?
would really lock it down. I think that
could-
there would be restrictions.
I agree, and again, this is probably just in my brain because I was in New Zealand recently, but the way the Maori move in New Zealand is very different than what is portrayed in Western media. When I was in New Zealand, I distinctly felt like I was in a Maori country,
Yeah.
and everybody else was allowed to be there. And because they've had a treaty going ever since 1800 with the British and the Dutch, and it's their culture. There's places that you don't go. They do hakas in the airport. Like there are places that you do not go, and that are Maori that if you enter, sorry, no, you don't come in here. You don't. That's great that you're a tourist. That's wonderful. Put the camera away. That's not what this is about. Like, and they even in the museum, there's a whole, in their national museum, there's a whole Maori section. You cannot take a single picture because it's not about that. If you want to learn, you sit, you learn, you sit, but you don't take pictures to take back to put on a T-shirt. Like, you know what I mean, with the designs and stuff. It's very, and they're serious. So I feel like that's just another real world example of how a culture could be preserved. And English and Maori are on everything. So maybe like and even just like we saw, like the Wakandan glyphs were on everything. So if there was a tour or whatever, I feel like it would run like that. It would run like, you're going to stay inside the lines. You're going to stay inside this area that were designated.
Everyone has beads, right? Everyone has beads, and if you step inside a certain area, it's like, bang, bang, you can't go. Or like when when they put the shields up in Infinity War, when they're like, that's what happens when you try and walk through. And you need like special permission. Yeah. Oh my god.
Or wait. Oh, even better. The beads could be low emitting EMPs. So if you try and take a picture, your phone doesn't work.
True.
Oh, I love that. Vibranium can do that.
It can.
Vibranium can do anything, apparently.
I honestly, in real life, real talk, I cannot wait for like real world, like pocket-sized EMPs. I'm sorry. Because it was so easy to like just basically get a bunch of people to pay attention if their phones didn't work.
Yes.
True.
That'd be great.
Be great for schools.
Yeah, definitely be great for schools.
Yes, it would be. And they have, I don't know if you guys have ever, well, in New York anyway, I had to go to jury duty like last year, and it wasn't an EMP, but they knew everybody that had a cell phone that was turned on in the room, and they could even tell you like, oh yeah, they could say, like, there were people that were like, that were sending text messages and stuff. And in this one main room, and the guy on the one of the security was like, yeah, so Steven, whatever he would say his name, quit texting your girlfriend on Facebook. I see you. It was like, whoa, what? Like it was really creepy. But this is already this exists already. So I'm sure they would have some tech to be like, yeah, you said you wouldn't. We told you not to take pictures.
I can neither confirm
let's invert the scenario where it's instead it's Wakanda and other countries because I think we're reaching an hour here, so I kind of want to talk about that final scene in the movie.
Okay.
So I kind of want to hear from you guys, like, what was your interpretation of what that solution was? Because it sounded like to me that he was basically proposing like STEM centers. That was like my interpretation. But like, if anyone wants to take the baton, like, to kind of describe to me what their take on like how they describe that final outreach solution that T'Challa had. What are good things that will come out of that? What are some like possible negative consequences from that? Because my concern is like, are they going to be displacing people? Like he's just buying all this land there in Oakland. So someone can take the.
I think I actually thought that was a really great idea because how many buildings he said? 4. Let me think. I bought that one and that one and that one. I think it's just I think it's just 3 that ones.
Flex T'Challa.
I feel like what I was thinking of initially when the very first time I saw this was that he was buying them out so that like people could not worry about having to pay rent and could focus on like investing money into their children. Because the kids, I think that T'Challa is very much about the kids. Like for some reason, I just feel like children are his passion, but we don't really see that. I think maybe it's just the future. Maybe he's just like, I really just want to set the country up for the future, because I guess like in how we learn in that scene where he goes back to the ancestral plane and he's like, you are wrong, you know?
Yeah.
That was so powerful, because it was like, I see that in the moment, T'Chaka was not thinking about the future in that way. Instead, he was thinking about the right now and like the immediate consequences, perhaps. So yeah, I feel like buying out those buildings so that families can put money in towards their kids. Also, a lot of like community centers, maybe, and then tutoring, after school tutoring, a nice little like a boys and girls club type thing sponsored by Wakanda.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
a sister school where like an exchange program.
Yeah.
I also think that medical. I mean, think about it. Like, Ross, the how Ross was shot in his spine. He should technically be paralyzed.
Yeah.
But she put a bead in his back, which stabilized him. And then 2 days later, he woke up and he was walking around healed.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "No, it's not a miracle. It's technology. That type of technology could be used in the field." In military, and like I'm just thinking of like the past application of the health aspects.
Yeah.
I think if they set up some type of health center that had, or almost like had a medical symposium,
Yes.
not in Wakanda, because you can have a Wakandan symposium outside of and basically explain the latest technology and bring gear that was the table that Shuri had and things like that. I don't think it would be difficult for the West to understand and use Wakanda's technology, or the rest of the world. I think they'd have a harder time dealing with the fact that a black girl under the age of 20, in the movie created it all. They were like, well, how could it be? It's still light years ahead of, what you have. So somebody like Tony Stark would have to, quote unquote, introduce her to the rest of the world.
Right.
That kind of thing, because she wouldn't be taken seriously because of Western biases.
I really want to see that meeting, by the way.
I also want to quickly add to with the health idea, how important it is right now, especially with like all these celebrity women, specifically Michelle Obama, Gabrielle Union, Serena Williams, all talking about birth complications that they've had.
Yeah.
And like the fact that there are doctors in the United States that genuinely don't listen to Black female concerns and have not for years. I think that's something that would also help, because maybe, I'm not saying that Shuri has the answers, but like maybe there is something in Wakandan research that could help explain why Black women for years have had a problem with childbirth, or have had issues with birth control and all this other stuff. And I feel like there would be so much more, there's just so much knowledge to be had and to be shared about our bodies that I think Wakanda could really contribute and help with.
Well, I think I could give you the answer to that. It's stress, but but to that end, there might be Wakandan birthing centers and things like that, a completely different, like doulas that come out of that are trained in a traditional Wakandan. There's all
midwifing
these
practice.
Exactly, that don't have to take place inside of Wakanda. They can all come out and teach everybody else how to do, to do stuff, and then end up on Goop with their name spelled wrong. But
Big mood.
Brandon, anything else on this?
I think one of the things that stuck out to me, keeping in the context of the movie, was that one of the main catalysts of starting this outreach, and especially starting in Oakland, was because of Killmonger, because he realized the damage that it had done to this young man's life, to the fact that he didn't want to see another Killmonger happen anywhere, and he realized that it was the product, it was the sins of the father that really came back to roost, or the chickens came back to roost, and so he really wanted to solidify that and go out and start helping the children. So I think that level of outreach would be something where they would do something STEM related. They would do something where they might even start up like educational centers and things like that for people to be able to help maybe job retraining and things like that. I think they will be tailored to the needs of the region where they are built. But I think really wants to
Mm-hmm.
try and establish a presence that yes, we are Wakanda is here. We are a force for good in the world, and we want to see everyone prosper. Because, like he said at the UN, we are all one tribe, and that is the philosophy that he is bringing with this idea. So he wants to help build up the other tribes of the world, which every other, in a sense, where it's like Wakanda is this center, quote unquote, but they're still embracing in that the same way that there is this mix and collection of tribes within Wakanda. Now he's doing it on a global scale and saying we are all our own tribes, but we are all still one people in that same sense, and so we must help each other. We have knowledge that you may not have, and we can help you achieve certain things that you can help you achieve your goals. We can help you get your people out of poverty. We can help you sustain your economy. We can help you do these things. We have the knowledge. We have the resources. Let us help you. And so, because he doesn't want to see kids go through that again.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then you know what? And he would probably that's the special thing, the transition thing. I think that might happen. Like if he finds other children, because Nnedi could not be the only war dog that had a kid outside the country. Let's just be realistic. So, like Sabrina, so that might be where you find the naturalization process.
Okay.
For people who find out that they are from Wakanda or they have Wakandan heritage, but they don't know anything about the country.
Yeah.
Okay, we are a little bit over an hour. Do we want to wrap this up, or I was curious if you guys had any, if you want to give, if you still have like a couple more minutes, if you wanted to talk about any wish lists, like world building wish lists for the eventual sequel from Coogler.
Yeah.
Yes.
World building. Again, I want to see, like, it's great that Shuri has a place out here. But honestly, for me, it's very funny because I just had this conversation with somebody very recently. I would love to meet other war dogs. I would love to see. I would love to see stories if we expanded this universe and brought it to, I don't know, Netflix, Disney, whatever. What are the other war dogs doing? Where are the places what are the problems that they're solving? How did they feel about being brought back in? What happens to someone like Nnedi that just does not want to go back? Or even some of the younger, what are the war dogs like now post everybody post everybody knowing about Wakanda? That is the world outside of Wakanda for the Wakandan is a story that I'm fascinated by. And then again, inside of Wakanda, honestly, I want to see Shuri as ruler. I'm sorry that she ruled in the comic twice. I just want to see her. She would probably, the thing that would be interesting about her is she would rule with technology, but she also is young, so she'd have some emotional things, kind of like what Nnedi was writing. But I feel like because she's young, she still has a bit to learn, but being thrown into the middle of a war and her brother disappearing and a bunch of different things, I really do want the next Black Panther to start with Shuri being the ruler. I really do.
Yeah, I would love that too, actually. I would love personally to get a glimpse in the life of the average Wakandan, because I feel like that because of the narrative that they were telling and that Coogler was focusing on, because because it's focused on T'Challa, who is part of the royal family, you don't really get the sense, you don't really get that narrative. You don't get where you have something where, like in Iron Man 3, where he's meeting like a random kid and getting to know the kid's life and how his actions have affected them. So I think it would be great to see how the people on the ground feel about everything that's happened so far, how they feel. So yeah, seeing that, like we talked about earlier, seeing them respond to the new to their new immigration and other policies. They're no longer an isolationist nation. how they felt about Killmonger, how they feel about T'Challa, and how they felt about T'Chaka dying, and things like that. We don't really get to see any of that. And also, I know we kind of talked about it in the first episode, but I would actually really like to get a sense of what social mobility does look like in Wakanda, because I don't know that we really got to see that on screen. Because again, we focused primarily on the royal family and those politics between the tribes.
And there is a lot of that in the comics, and it's not good because it's like there's a very big gap between the haves and the have-nots, and that's one of the issues that is brought up a lot in the comics and World of Wakanda and stuff. So it'd be interesting if that is something that's brought into the MCU, because as we've seen, the royal family isn't perfect, so the world that they created couldn't be.
Exactly.
Right. For me, I think the only thing I would add is I feel like the best way to do that is harkening back to my favorite MCU film, other than this one, in Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier.
Of course, we see Cap going through that exhibition and basically like the exhibition about himself and the Howling Commandos, and I think something like that in the form of the airport, perhaps. Maybe Martin Freeman's character, maybe Ross, is coming back to Wakanda and he's like going through and he's like, oh, everything is different now, and we're seeing everyone interacting with each other, but a little bit more in depth, or like he gets his bags, sort of a series of shots thing where maybe he's going down that little, like, the moving walkway, and there's like a track playing, or like an audio track playing being like, welcome to Wakanda. Here we do this and this and this. When in this area, please do da 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 da. You know,
kind of like Westworld. Kind of
Yes.
like Westworld when they come off the train.
That would be cool.
Exactly.
That would be cool. But Sabrina,
That's what I would love.
Sabrina, don't forget about the VA scene in Winter Soldier.
The VA scene?
With when Sam is talking to the soldiers.
Yeah, Sam Wilson's like talking to veterans, I think. And,
Yeah.
That too. Just like right. So Nakia, I want to see her in action other than her fighting. Like, I want to see her interacting. Like, what does her community of people look like? Also, are they about to get married in this movie? Because I want to see a wedding, bro.
Wakandan wedding.
Right.
Wakandan.
Wakandan
We can get that
wedding.
question
Wakandan
answered.
wedding, yeah.
That's the name of the episode. It's Wakandan Wedding.
We can get that question answered now.
We'll workshop it. Yeah.
I just want to see Angela Bassett in another gown.
Yeah.
That's all.
I'm trying to have her have more lines. Like, I need some clapbacks. I need, yeah.
I don't know.
Someone
my
ran a
list.
rumor that they were trying to get Donald Glover in the cast, but like he's already Aaron Davis. But I don't. You can put Donald
Have
Glover
Aaron
in the MCU
Davis
all you
come
want.
to the airport.
I mean,
Yeah, they don't. The MCU doesn't like mixing up their. Although
But their
they
TV
didn't
shows
care
do.
about that with Chris with Captain America,
Yeah.
because I have been saying that I really want now that Marvel is taking back the MCU, can get back Fantastic Four.
yes.
I'm like, oh, please have the Fantastic Four meet Avengers so that Captain America and Johnny Storm can have that awkward moment.
I mean, Michael B. Jordan was also.
He was
Johnny
also Johnny Storm,
so, like,
exactly.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, he could be Johnny Storm again because Killmonger's kind of dead in the MCU.
Yeah.
For now.
Might as well. I feel like the cast that they had for Fantastic Four was great.
Yeah.
They had all the pieces together, and I believed that it could have worked. It just fell apart.
It honestly fell apart
Oh,
in the
man.
second half of that movie, but that's another discussion for another time.
Yeah, that's a whole other
Yeah,
podcast.
in our I don't know, our 3-4 year anniversary of
Yes.
Fantastic Four by Josh Trank, 2 parts of it.
Oh man.
Honestly, thank you so much to all 3 of you for being here, for being this this really amazing roundtable. I mean, I had like all of these little bullet points, and you guys went like far beyond the breadth of discussion that I thought was going to be had, and this is like a really compelling discussion. I think that I hope people will like.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you. Thank
This
you
was
so
fun.
much for having us.
Amazing chat, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you guys want to start your own podcast without me, like, I will listen.
Thank
to
you
that.
for being an ally.
Thank you. And Wakanda forever.
There you go. Wakanda forever.
I'm gonna plug our social media because we AP Marvel is on Twitter and Facebook. You can just as a reminder, you can find me at Compenderizer. Sabrina, where can people find you on Twitter again?
On Twitter, you can find me at Sabs Clark, at SABSCLARKE.
Brandon, your social media and anything you want to quickly plug.
Yes. So you can find me on Twitter at BCKesso. That's BCKESSO. You can find Rising Young Minds at The Rhyme. That's THE_RYM. You can also find them on Facebook at Rising Young Minds and on Instagram also at Rising Young Minds.
Dope.
You can find me, Karma, the Blur Girl, THEBLERDGURL, all over social media, mostly on Twitter. I also do a couple other podcasts. One is Who Won the Week for Sci-Fi. That's out every Friday. And I also have a monthly podcast that we do in a local comic book shop called The Radical Geeks with Angelique Roche, also Marvel. So yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Hell yeah.
Oh man, I can imagine.
Yeah. Again, you can subscribe to AP Marvel on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and any podcast platform of your choice. Leave us a review. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/APMarvel. Also our Medium, which is medium.com/AP-Marvel. We are on Discord. The link is on the show notes. You can join our discussions there. Thanks to Charles Villanueva for the graphics, Steve Motter for the track Jazz Ventures. Thanks to all our top Patreons, including and especially James Coran. We got some stuff coming up after this. This is going up on February 21st. Again, we're recording this on MLK Day. Interestingly enough, tomorrow, as of this recording, the Oscar nominations will be out. So we're gonna see what Black Panther noms we get there. Certainly, all the names you mentioned in part 1 of all of the, like the production designer, set designer, cinematographer, so and so, they should all be honored for this movie, in my opinion. But
Ruth Carter should win.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, if Ruthie Carter doesn't win, I will march.
Kurt.
If Ruthie Carter does not, I will boycott everything.
Yeah.
5:20 a.m. is when they are announcing these nominations, just in case.
Yeah.
Eastern time, Pacific time.
Wow.
So 8 a.m. Oh, I'm gonna be up. I'm listening.
Wait, I'm probably gonna wake up at like 10 a.m. and like look at my phone and like be happy
Read the
or
full
mad
list.
from my bed. Like,
Yeah.
so we'll see. Again, this is going up February 21st. So we will. The Oscars will actually be the Sunday after this episode comes out. So the episode we're planning after this coming out, I guess will be February 28th if my math is correct. We're gonna do a little episode on, do the Oscars really matter? Do we care that the MCU doesn't get Oscars? But who knows? Maybe Black Panther won everything, and like the conversation will be totally different. But we'll see. We'll see. And then after that, we're gonna have a lot of Captain Marvel related stuff, because that is actually beginning of March, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are all excited for that.
Yeah.
And that's gonna do it. Man, that was that was a lot of recording tonight, but we did it.
Woohoo!
Thanks again for everyone for being here, and thank you, the listener, for listening to this. Be sure to tell your friends. Anyway, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks.